Chug the up. Pow, pow. All right. What's up, y'all? So, having massive technical difficulties with Zoom. We're going to take it over to IG. This is the Archetypes and Characters Workshop. And we have a special guest joining us soon. All right. What's up, Michael? Okay. View request. Okay, hold on, y'all. Having a boomer moment. Oh, okay. Accept. I'm going to save this for sure. When we get the eye boogies out. I'm going to save this for sure. Yo!
All right.
Can you hear me?
Here we go. Yes, I can hear you. Fine. Perfect.
You know what? That's behind us. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Thank you for being sturdy with that. Thank you for being sturdy. Oh my goodness, chill. Let me get some water.
Right.
They make it so hard for us to connect. It's like this is all we want to do.
Right.
I just want to connect.
That's all,
We just want to connect. Make it so hard, make it so difficult. But you know what? We're here. We're together.
Yeah.
How are you doing again?
Doing good. Yes.
That's good. Well, I want to start by saying thank you so much. Thank you for your time. We about 30 minutes in, child. I wanted to be done by now, but let me know. Look, I'm gonna be honest. I don't want to take up too much of your time. But like, what I planned was about like.
Good. I'm clear.
Cool. Well, let me know if you got a dash. I have a sort of itinerary. Okay, all right.
Where I want to be, right here.
Thank you. Well,
I got my book and all of it.
Look, I got notes too. Cause
look.
Come on. So this is a just kind of like an itinerary.
Okay.
This is going to be it's the Archetypes and Characters Workshop. And
right.
By workshop, like I mean that to the truest extent, where I'm not necessarily teaching anything. Workshopping is I'm presenting ideas that I'm hypothesizing or trying to articulate. And if you feel the need to interject or add your perspective, by all means, please do. It's a back and forth. And it's more like supplementary, just for creatives. And I remember you saying you have a script that's in the works.
Right.
So yeah. So my hope is to kind of add some like some supplements to that, just to give a new perspective, some new inspiration in order to push those characters forward in your story. And what I plan to do is like an intro, what it is that I'm doing. I'm going to get into kind of like the history of archetypes and characters, give it a context to make it make sense. And then I want to end kind of with like an activity, if you're interested in like a little engagement, like a little movement or whatever. So, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
All right. So, we're here. Okay. So, this is, I'm Jam Boom Boom as the world premiere. And that is my theater artist, character personification of all my geeky theater interests and passions. To play on words, like the premiere as in like a, the debut of something, but it's also the premiere like in a governmental sense, like representing parliament, representing states and all that. But I'm representing myself, representing culture, representing the theater arts. And what I'm doing is building a curriculum, a unique perspective, instead of regurgitating all the greats, because I'm no hater, all the greats that came before me with performance theater, like Richard Schechner, those people who were doing like the grassroots work, they were kind of coming up with theories as they were doing their own thing, like having established theater companies, having buildings, but then they were also writing fucking like theses and like 100-page essays about what it is that they're doing, because they just had that sort of savvy about theater making sense in the world and not just something that you sit and participate in, or not just something that you watch. So they kind of just took it a step further and said, okay, this funny thing called theater and performance has something to do with this world that we're in. And I'm looking at it, Jam is looking at it through the context of the environment and how there's the working class, how there's the quote unquote elite or the governmental body, how there's motherfuckers who just don't care about that shit, and what it is that we're all doing. We all watch movies, we're all entertained to some extent. And so I'm looking at theater and performance, and not just entertainment, but ritual through that context. And so that is the big goal. Down the line, we'll have a whole curriculum and a whole way of looking at this thing called entertainment and performance and stories. So yeah, that's me. If you want to do an intro, by all means.
All right. I'm Chance the Homie Epps. I go by Chance Omnivisions. I'm birthing Sovereign Star Studios. I'm an artist, visual artist, but I'm also a all-around artist, and a very well traveled artist. I've traveled a lot of different places. I've experienced a lot of different life. I've lived a lot of different lives. I've been in a lot of different kind of worlds, and right now I'm just creating. I'm on my creative shit. It's that time. I've just been creating and creating and creating, and I fucking love it because it's like, for so long I was like waiting for something to like really click, but it's like, nah, let me just go ahead and start creating.
Yeah.
Those little conversations to myself and like for others, Yeah. So that's a little bit about me.
Nah, I fucks with that because it's like the time is now. I know from when you were saying like waiting and waiting, I just thought about my experience, and it's like waiting for resources or waiting for, that person to invite me to dinner or waiting for that handshake, that validation that promises resources. But I have the internal resources. I have the endless creativity. I can make a movie in 2 seconds. That kind of idea. It's all good. Yeah, it's all good. And as we continue. Oh, my bad.
Oh, I was just jumping in when you was like, I was just saying like in sharpening our skills, like because now we're not waiting anymore, we sharpening. Like my motherfucking eye is sharp. Like when I get behind the camera, it's sharp as fuck, because I've really been just doing. I just been edit, and it's like, okay, yeah.
I'm writing.
We're creating,
We're creating, and that's awesome. In this collaborative space, this place to just see what sticks, on the wall, just keep throwing ideas and seeing, and then eventually making these creative ideas practical. And that's what I want to do, or that's what I'm doing. Just how to make these ideas practical as I continue to stay consistent and develop this sense of discipline for myself, because there's no blueprint for this. We're the blueprints. We're creative.
We are.
And so this is the space to do that. And specifically, I have just like a list of workshops, but this one is going to be about archetypes and characters. And so just going to jump right into that as far as like how we're creating. But what are we creating? And I want to specifically talk about stories, but this can apply to poems, to songs, to movies, which are, movies is just like indoctrinated stories or like political stories, because it has to do with like industry and those resources and those people who control the studios and the equipment. But at the core of it, it's just a little story. Like it's a little story time. Right. And stories are consisting of archetypes and characters. And so I want to kind of take it back to like the starting point of theater. I want to do some more pondering on this idea, just because the textbooks and videos are talking about like theater starting in Greek and Roman times. But before that, it's this idea that, spirits in human bodies were just like, we were doing something. We were doing something before the advent of society. And this thing that we were doing was ritual. And ritual always points to us first being in the human body, but we're trying to point to the spirit. We're trying to point to the back then unknown. We're trying to point to the no thing. But we have to use our bodies to do so. It's limited, but it's also powerful in a sense because, well, it created society. It created rules, it created language, and forget culture and forget, the raping and pillaging, the authoritarianism of it all. That idea of that witchcraft being able to create something from nothing, that's what theater is looking at. That's what Jam is looking at as far as performance theory. So we were, I'll say we, just like the earliest humans you can think of. And it's this whole idea that Can you hear me? Oh, my bad. I'm gonna wait till I'm gonna wait till I no, because it just kind of ended. It just kind of like slowed down on my end. But are we
Yeah,
good?
it's good. Okay, yeah.
Okay, we're good. Let me know. Yeah, let me know if anytime I get choppy too, because I'll stop.
Okay.
But yeah, okay. So where I was getting at was just the idea of ritual, and we're pointing back to the spirit. And it was this entire idea that when when humans started to create society, it was this idea of authoritarianism. It was this idea of me over you. I was able to tap into this source of spirituality or of the spirit, and you weren't. Those motherfuckers, they went full force with it. They said, I'm the king. I'm the ruler. We did it first. So we the best, like they were gung ho about it. And then there were other people who didn't necessarily, they weren't in on the joke. These people became the quote unquote sheep. They became the ones that needed to be shepherded, who needed shelter, who needed rules, who needed laws. And so the idea of archetypes comes from and is looked at through the lens of authoritarianism, rulership, those holding court, those responsible for law. And so these, it's just a brief history, as they, they created their structure, they created their laws, they created the language, they created how things are run within their environment. I mean, obviously, rain, sleet, hail, desert, all that type of weather came through. I'm talking about physically, came through and maybe destroyed some cities, maybe helped some cities. But what these group of people were doing were just trying to withstand the seasons in order to continue their rulership, in order to continue having their cities. And so as the seasons went on, they could start to see, okay, during this time, we don't have that much food. How do the people that we're shepherding, that we're taking care of, or our duty, our responsibility to take care of these lost souls, how are they reacting to this? Oh, so they saw that some people, if they got hungry, they would maybe steal, or they would maybe fight, or they would maybe kill. So again, this idea of archetypes, these people are just sitting back with their books and, because there's like, we trying to rule this thing forever. We trying to be here forever. What's basically happened is that they're documenting the characteristics and the traits of those who are not in power, of those who are relying on them. And thus the creation of archetypes. So that idea first coming from I imagine like the councilmen, the powdered wigs. So they already have their roles and titles. Archetypes, and I want to say this, archetypes are more so catered to status in society, and characteristics or characters are more so those internal traits, and accumulation of those things make an archetype. But that history was just to say who's responsible for creating these archetypes. And 10 times out of 10, because we're in it right now, we're in a society. They're created by those who are in rulership, those who are in power. And so I wanted to use, I'm on my phone, but I guess I can just like go run down from memory this entire idea of, because like society and theater go hand in hand. There isn't too much information. I mean, I'm here now, so I'm going to discover like, what was we doing before, the Greeks and Romans put people on plays and, on stage and stuff. We was just unga and try to summon in spirits and, and some people got to, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. Right. But I want to keep it concise for this one. So I'll continue with the history. So like that's Greek and Roman times. By medieval times, so like the Greeks and the Romans, they were doing theater to promote, their politics, promote their religions, all their gods and goddesses, their religions. Their politics, their Caesars, their Pontius, all of that. The policemen that were there too. So again, I just stated an archetype right there, like a policeman. But what is a policeman, or what is a knight? Going to medieval times, this idea that if you portray certain traits and characteristics, and you are consistent and you develop discipline in that, you can be knighted in our society. You can wear this badge of honor because you are now an archetype, because you have displayed these characteristics throughout the long run. So it's kind of like a bestowing from rulership, these archetypes. Even when I want to move away from Greek and Roman and go to medieval times, this whole idea of the king, the queen, the princess, the councilman, the court jester. That entire idea of someone who really probably comes from nothing. 9 times out of 10, they weren't born into royalty, but they displayed certain characteristics. Say that they were good at singing, say that they were good at dancing, say that's maybe what they did to make money, outside of the palace, outside of the castle. And they might have been spotted by, a king or a knight or a scout for the king, and they were taken into the kingdom. And this is that idea of like being signed to a record label or coming up real quick, going viral. That entire idea. So I mean, we're still doing the same things, but it's this idea that you come from nothing, and by nothing I mean, in a societal sense, you don't have a status, and then you're taken and you're told to you better keep tap dancing. You better keep singing. This is how you're going to make your money. This is how you're going to make your bread. This is how you're going to make your living and be known for something. So there is kind of like that like selling your soul kind of connotation that comes with it. But, on the flip side, I mean, this is just what we're doing. We're creating, we're trying to uphold a certain light, but it's understanding and it's understanding like, where is that light? Like, what is that context that we're upholding it in? And, I don't want to get too deep in, how entertainers kind of internalize what it is that they're doing, the type of money that they're getting. But I can just imagine, and I say this because the Black Jester, the character is dealing a lot with this, like, oh, what am I doing all of this for? If I'm so talented, who's considering me to be so talented? But that's another archetype, like the singer or the dancer. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I was like, I don't want to dive too deep, but that's like more so like medieval times, and everyone internalizes shit differently. Anyway, get off my high horse, so moving forward to like William Shakespeare. This is like the 1500s or whatever time they said he was alive. Like William Shakespeare, if you look at the bulk of William Shakespeare's plays, they're all about royalty. They're all about rulership, the King Henrys, the Hamlets, all of these motherfuckers. But the thing is, I'm not a hater. Shout out to William Shakespeare. The thing is, most people overlook that because what William Shakespeare was able to do was to humanize these authoritarians by putting on display through dialogue the characteristics and the traits that they were dealing with, emotionally, mentally. Like I think of Hamlet. In this discussion of mental illness, seeing ghosts, being deranged. I think of Ophelia, which I think is in Hamlet. She's like driven to insanity. I think she kills herself. It's this entire idea that we're forgetting. I'm looking at it like, well, I think these motherfuckers just have blood on their hands because they're a part of like some like night guild, and like they have to kill people in order to uphold. But what William Shakespeare was able to brilliantly do was kind of bypass that and kind of see through the status of, these characters of royalty, and just kind of see like they're dealing with characteristics and traits that we're all dealing with. And he's like, I gotta give it up to William Shakespeare for that, if he was real.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, if he was real.
If he was real. I am for that because it's still something that people are talking about today, and we're not necessarily saying, I mean, I would look at it, I'm like, I'm not going to try to dive that deep into it because who told these motherfuckers to be king? Who told these motherfuckers to write law and shit? But it's like, that's a whole nother, that's, we talk about that later. So, my last point is to, kind of rush through the 1500s and kind of get to like the 1800s, the creation of America, and then the creation of the entertainment industry. And so, again, going into these archetypes and using the court jester kind of example earlier and saying, this idea of fame, the superstar that is created by an industry. It's created by a group of people behind the scenes. They'll take someone, I'll use, for example, Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe is an entire archetype. Right. Her story is like, she's taken from the South, somewhere in the southern states. Someone tells her, you look good, I don't know necessarily the story, but like she shake a couple hands, but basically what I do know is that her style, her look, like the glamorized look, was all curated. They bleached blonde her hair. They trained her to walk and talk a certain way on camera and screen, and she did it well. Don't get me wrong. Like the talent was there. That's not something that you can just put on. So I'm not going to be one to be like, oh, she wasn't talented. No, she was talented. She was beautiful. She was talented, and she upheld that archetype, but for the screen. Now, like, what comes into play and how it gets a little confused is when the cameras are off. And it's this whole idea of dealing with fame, because when you're signing up and when you're signing that deal, you're actually signing the deal to be an archetype. And a lot of people don't know that, or when they find that out, it might be a little too late. So it's that idea of, okay, you have these particular traits. I'll use Marilyn Monroe again. You're beautiful. You can sing, you can act, you can dance. You can book all of the, you're booked and busy. But when the cameras are off, you have to continue to uphold those archetypes. And we see her story, and I don't want to trivialize her experience at all. It's like it can get a lot deeper than that. I'm just looking at it through this context of how are you upholding that image when the cameras are off, because you're expected to be on. Cameras is flashing everywhere you go. You're Marilyn Monroe. So it's that idea that these corporations, these labels are creating these names. Tina Turner, for example, Justin Timberlake, they just sold their entire catalog. These are archetypes now. You can think of Tina Turner, I think legs, I think hair, I think crazy performer. Justin Timberlake, I think blue-eyed soul, I think pop star, I think. So these are these ideas that archetypes are created through the lens of what today we would call the media, or someone that we can't see. And then characteristics and characters are internal, and something that as spirits and as individuals, we can accumulate over time. I'll use myself, for example. I went to school for a little while. I accumulated what it means to educate myself. And these are characteristics that I hold. And then the archetype is just something that I have to create instead of waiting for that validation from another eye, from the all-seeing eye type shit, from someone else, because someone else can call me anything. They can look at me right now on live, be like, oh, he's there, he did. But in my mind, I'm projecting a completely different light. So now we're in a position where we get to create the archetypes, but it's the knowing of what it is that we're doing, especially as creatives. You don't want to be typecasted. You don't want to, yeah. So it's that entire idea of empowering ourselves by knowing what it is that we're doing.
Right.
I think that's it for my, the history of how these things came about. So if you have anything you want to throw back or bring up.
Yeah, I also like how you was talking about, so the character is inside of you. So you make the character, and then inside of that character, you create the archetype.
Yeah, I think of character and characteristics, like your character.
Okay.
I think I'll use the MLK. I'll use the MLK quote, for example, where he was all about, because this world is ruled by image. So he was like, all right, it don't matter. This don't matter. It's my character. But character is not something that you can see. Character is something that we judge internally. That vibe we get by someone. Their act, how they perform in a particular way. We assume character after these things. So the characteristics, and then the character, the accumulation of those things. And then the archetype, when we take those characteristics and put them in different contexts, the context of the entertainment industry, the context of politics, business. I'm thinking of Jay-Z, where that archetype was just rapper. Right. It's like, wait a second, over time, the 2000s, that archetype changed to mogul. Wait a second, how do you do that? Whoa.
It was always in him.
It was always in them. It was always, but all we could see was just
characteristic.
You're right. All we could see is girls. But he I'ma be them. So it's we're internalizing something completely different than what's being seen and broadcasted, especially through the media.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'm right on track with what you putting down.
Let's go. All right. Yeah. Please let me know. Because I did the first workshop yesterday with Kiyoshi. Shout out to Kiyoshi. That's so group. And it was just something where I kind of, I have points, but I'm inspired by the flight boss, where I don't want to necessarily stick to a script. I want to just be in that and say, and
right.
Yeah. So that's kind of the history of archetype. And this is how I would teach it, where I don't know how else is being taught, but this is just how I've experienced and I've seen it and observed how archetypes are formed and characters are formed, and thus we can create them now. And this is kind of where the empowerment part of the workshop comes in, where as creatives, we're responsible for for bringing out something new. It's 2022. I feel the pressure of and I'm gonna just say me, I feel the pressure of everything that's been done before, as far as I think of things in the decades, you think of each era, and you think of what's been put out that era or even that year. I feel the pressure to, kind of join, but it's wait a second, I want to do something new. So that might take a little bit longer for me, but eventually I'm going to put it out. Yeah. So it's that idea that I want to create new characters. I want to create new archetypes, because we're moving and shifting into a new world. I don't want to see the same things on the screen, and I'm no hater, but shout out to Netflix, but it's Netflix kind of got themselves into a little knot, because it's people aren't tuning in to the stories, to your original content. Remember when Netflix was we got all the movies from your childhood past, and then now we have Netflix originals, but your numbers have been dropping since them originals came out.
Because they like everything. I'm hold up, where's the original? Where it is.
They're pandering to us due to our skin color, due to our sexuality, due to our income.
Crazy.
It's and then creating narratives off of that, and it's no, I don't accept it. I'm not entertained. I'd rather watch some cartoons or something like that, or go back to. But that's just my personal opinion.
I wanted to my character that I'm building out.
Let's go.
So we can bring it into this archetype and characters conversation. So right now my protagonist is myself, Chance the Homie Epps, and the actual space I'm in is being the cannabis journalist. I'm an investigative journalist.
Wow.
Okay, and I'm using, and for this I'm also okay. I was I want to add really a part of myself. So I just picked an alignment that I really wanted to investigate more of. And so the alignment that I used was Moon opposing Venus. And because, let me tell you, because I love cannabis so much, and but my Moon, the reaction, think about the reaction to the love is opposing, but it's something that I love. So it's going on this journey of uncovering this love that I have for cannabis, and it's but I met with all of this resistance. It's oh, should I smoke now? Oh, I'm in the military. Oh, I'm out of the military now. Oh, I'm a it's all these things, but it's also a part of the alignment. It's that because I'm studying myself a lot more and studying my chart a lot more, and looking at my life and trying to put all the pieces together, see where my spirit has been, and really bring it all back to myself so I can actually see parts of myself. So this is what I've been working on. But the characteristics, I've been I'm still working on it, because I was really characteristics, I was kind of just sitting on it. I didn't really know where to I've been taking the astrology route. I've been taking look, I have a whole entire workout. It's a Venn diagram. It's like a room. So this is where the protagonist sits, and this is where the antagonist sits, and then this is right here. How I remember you was telling me about triangles, where you do the idea, the problem, and the solution and stuff. So I was okay, right. And I was okay, so the idea, problem, and solution for just one of the stories, because I was, I can actually take that form and put it in all the, put it everywhere. Idea, problem, solution, and do a whole series of just me working out certain things of how to, I'm still kind of
No, for sure. And thank you for sharing that with me. Like, thank you for sharing that with me. And I want to say, like, from the top, I want to take it from the top. That is brilliant. And that's where we're going to take archetypes and characters. That entire idea that tarot derived these archetypes in traditional tarot, derived these archetypes from astrology, because that's what's being done behind the scenes. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are how we're acting out archetypes within society right now, because of the study of the planet's influence on us. So that's brilliant, and that's where I want to take it next. Like, that was the history, but this is where I want to take it next, where we have the know-how for from the astrological standpoint. And what I want to say with that is that's brilliant. And I did that, like, I think it was last year. Yeah, and still working with that entire concept. But you said moon opposed Venus. So that in itself can draw characteristics down. So the characteristics that you can use, what you can use the houses, and you can use the sign that it's in.
Okay.
So numerologically wise, figure out that synastry, and then the synastry of the sign and the element. Those are all the characteristics you need. And derive what those things are, and from your personal experience. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Right, fast. Okay, so because I was thinking about characteristics differently, but this is what I have written down right here. Written down. Okay, so my moon is fire. I'm a Leo, 5 degree, and then my Venus is Aquarius, 2 degrees. It's a dust element. So I got a fire and a dust element opposing each other. And then, so the moon I have for emotions, and I got the Venus. So my emotions are opposing my love. But then I have under it, like, because it was like, I heard you had said something about worldview and environment, understand like the worldview that this is in. And so I was like, oh, the worldview is the moon opposing Venus. That's the space I'm in. But the environment I put for temperance and moderation, because the emotions and love is like, learning the temperance and moderation of that allows me to learn the equilibrium of it. But I don't know, that's not a characteristics, but this is just little.
No, that's all research, and that's good for you. What I want to interject and say, and the characteristics are trivial as fuck. They're not like everything that you're saying. Don't get me wrong. Everything that you're saying is brilliant for you. Like, as a creative, it's brilliant for you. The characteristics are trivial. Keep it simple when it comes to the characteristics. Allow the story to be complex. For the character, they're not complex, because guess what? The characters have their own alignments, but guess what? There's an entire alignment going on in space within space. So allow the character to transform and get more complex throughout the story, and they don't necessarily have to start off with they're quirky with a bad side, but they also have a deep dark. See, it's like it doesn't even have to go that far in the beginning, because when you said dust and fire. The dust element for Venus, and then the fire element for the moon. Was that right?
Right.
You know what I just thought of?
What?
Character can have allergies. I thought of a campfire, like being around a campfire and the dust that comes around it. I'm like, like, damn, wait for these s'mores. Like
cannabis.
And that can be a characteristic, like they got allergies, and maybe smoking is what helps them out, and thus that creates their passion for.
Wow.
Trivial. Very, very trivial. Even to the point where, like, it's almost you have to water it down so much, because a story is super watered down. It's the personification of these complex influences. And even us using these words to describe it, like, we're not doing it any justice, but we're doing the best that we can with what has already been established. And through the creation of the story, then we're creating something new overall. But yeah, what I would say with that, no, it's beautiful. And I wasn't trying to, put it to the side, but that's great for research. Sit and ponder on that, but make it as simple as possible when it comes down to the characteristics, because characteristics are simple. Loyalty, trustworthy, hardworking. These are simple and trivial words, but then, okay, in what context are you hardworking? Then it gets more complex when you think about when you get outside of the character.
Okay,
is what I would say. Yeah. Because we're blank slates, and I'm just going to use humans as examples. We're blank slates, but if you put us in the desert, we might turn into I don't know. If you take us to Antarctica, we might turn into something else. See, like, just we're expendable and adaptable. That
Right.
entire idea, the context is important.
Okay.
Or what creates us, like the environment can inspire us and change us for the better, for the worse. So
Right. Okay.
yeah, no, I fucks with that. No, I fucks with that.
All
The
right.
Lost Dogs Chase Tails story. I used planetary influences to help me get from chapter 1 to 12. So
Wow.
so I make sure that when I'm writing that, okay, this is chapter 5. I can't think of any specific. I have them in notes, but like I'll just use an example. Like for chapter 5, that might be like a Leo type influence. So I want to make sure that something like bold happen. And again, very trivial. Maybe like someone is put on blast. Someone becomes like realizes that they're the shit. Some shit hits the fan. Something is all about somebody, like someone ends up revealing that they're super selfish. Like these are just very, very trivial, and it's not necessarily everything that Leo encompasses, but it's just a
Right.
little trait. It's just a little characteristic,
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I see. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like that. Oh, I think I.
No, that's what's up. That's what's up. And that's how we're gonna create these new characteristics. And then the
Oh,
archetype is gonna come with what is the story that we're telling? Because we know that every story, and I'll use the Bible for example, every story is just a personification of thoughts and feelings. But what is the storytelling? It's telling how we got into the body, but then also how we got into rulership. It's like in all these characters and characteristics and traits are just talking about how one person was talking to their mind, but physically they were trying to conquer the world, like so. But it's like all
right.
these characters. So then what is your story? And that can be another workshop. This is just food for thought. I got Mercury in Aquarius. I just be like, all right, blah, 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 and it's in the third house. I'll be like, all right, blah, 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 blah. Rhetoricals, basically. Like, there's a
Oh,
bunch of
I love.
rhetoricals.
I got an Aquarius. My Venus in Aquarius. I love Aquarian things. I like
Yo, we here,
Aquarian.
baby. We here. So,
Yeah.
no, that's what's up. Is there any other like what you're working on, or any other like feedback?
Yeah. Oh, so I
Mm-hmm.
also. How do you also incorporate your principles and virtues inside of your when you're creating your characters? And
Mm-hmm.
or like where like are you? Is it just for you in the background, or like how
Wow.
do you incorporate your principles and your virtues?
So and I'm realizing this the more I talk and the more I apply. I'm a context person. It's all about the environment. It's all about the intentions, like the everything that's external informing the internal. So
Okay.
I look at the mission and the task that's at that the or what's at risk. What's at risk of being lost? What's at
Oh,
risk of being gained?
right,
I think of like high risk situations.
right,
Um, a high risk situation, and then I think of what needs to be obtained from the character.
right.
um Ulterior motives helps a lot too.
Oh,
um
yes.
Kind of what is their darker side. Would they kill for this? Would they change for this?
Okay.
uh, yeah. And so the virtue and principle for are you speaking specifically on the character's virtue and principle, or like the moral of the story?
Oh, yeah. No, I was speaking specifically about the character. Like, how do you like put it inside of the characteristics of the story?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah. No,
like
yeah. Okay.
I have a principle of rhythm. Like my character is going to have a principle of rhythm, and also the virtue that it's going to hold is harmony and patience. So like, and when you combine those together, it's like
Hmm.
how you put that together. I wrote it down. I have
Sure. And you said this story is about you, so you're essentially the central star, yeah.
right, right.
And you're not necessarily the good guy, bad guy, good girl, bad
No,
girl.
no,
You're not necessarily that, right? So
no.
I would say, and I would say, think of that character if it's purely imaginative, or if it was an actual event that happened in your life. Think about when you ponder about that person or that character. Think about how they make you feel. That's their virtue and principle.
Okay,
That's their virtue and
thank
principle.
you.
Mm-hmm. And this is the idea of mythologizing, because if we know that this story, like I'll use the Institute Pursuit, for example, Jam is the central character of the story. Everyone else is playing out thoughts and feelings according to his perspective. So it's not necessarily right. And what I'm doing is making fun of myself. So it's like, even if I see someone, or like I'll see like one of the professors as a bad guy, that just means I see myself as inferior. But I'm going to personify it as they're being a bad guy. Yeah, they're being like malicious, but I'm being inferior, or I'm belittling and devaluing myself. So it'll be two things going on at once. Yeah. So just think about how that character influences you, and then stay true to that throughout the story. And by that, I mean, you know, like maybe they'll change. Maybe they'll end up being, you know, your best friend. Maybe they'll, and you know. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
No, good shit. No, thank you. Of course.
You know.
Hell yeah. No, hell yeah.
So, okay. And so I talked about that. Oh, and then, yeah, I think so. And then, so I was just wondering, so your character can be your protagonist and antagonist?
Oh gosh. Not you, but just that whole concept. So, you know, being responsible for creating something new, and this entire idea of why we got here in the first place. So I will say no, to answer your question. No, like protagonist, antagonist, it has to go, because put it in context, we end up protagonizing and antagonizing each other based on how you think, based on your religion, based on we end up just doing that anyway. But what I want to bring forward, what I want us to bring forward, as a collective of creatives, and especially for storytelling and story making, this idea of who's attached the most and who's not willing to detach. And shout out to the Archangel Uriel. This idea of being attached to a desire, recognizing that you're attached to a desire, but then what do you like when you realize that? So I'll take, for example, another original story of mine, like the Jaguar. There is a pastor reverend character. So for me, I would naturally make the pastor reverend character the bad guy. But I'm like, you know what? I don't necessarily feel that way. Like, just do what you got to do. You know, like, you just making money. You in the world. You don't know no better. But what I'm doing is having a moment for the pastor to realize that the type of ministry that he's involved in is corrupt. Once he realizes that, due to his own actions, he gets himself in a sticky situation. He can either run away from it, do a public apology, or he could just go gung-ho and say, you know what, forget it. I'm really in this, like, for real. Like, I'm really... So it's that idea of presenting the character with a moment to change, whether they start off good or bad, because the protagonist can end up being naive. They can be manipulated by their family, and their family's the one who's telling them, you're a good little girl, you're a good little boy, don't think about those things. But it's like, wait a second, like, maybe they have to think about those things in order to expand their awareness. So yeah, that's what I would say to eliminate protagonist, antagonist. Who's the most...
Oh, I feel that. Like, I because Archangel Uriel, like, doing that 180, like, because you're always going back to, like, there is, right.
Mm-hmm. And he inspired me to create that concept. And to get rid of and to get rid of hero and villain, like, because I mean, some of the villains be popping. Look at Maleficent. Maleficent got her own feminine shit. It's like, but Maleficent couldn't happen in the 1950s. You want to know why? Because it was more so about heroes and archetypes. It was the Dorothys, the Wicked Witch of the West. You know what I'm saying? But that turn came where it's like, let's make Maleficent the central star. Let's make her and see. So she's not all that bad, everybody. You got it all wrong. So yeah, let's flip it on its head.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to do it, do it. If you want a bad guy, have a bad girl, have a good girl, all of that.
I was looking up script writing because, you know, I've been a visual artist and a photographer for 14 years, but I'm just now getting, like, you know, my videography, you know, behind the scenes, all of this. And when I was doing some research, it was like, you got to have a protagonist and an antagonist. And
oh, God.
couple of years. You know,
See
okay.
when that book was written. Go find out when that book was published. Go see.
Oh,
It'd probably be like 1980,
right,
like 1992. You know, that's when academia was popping in like the late 90s or the late 80s, early 90s type shit. They was going off. They was on the printing press. But yeah,
right.
throw that shit away. I mean, it still works. Don't get me wrong. So that's why I was like, hey.
But yeah, but not in the direction we're moving in.
Sure. And that's pushing the envelope. That's creating something new. Yeah. And it's experimental. We're in the experimental realm as well too, because it's like I'm gonna use myself. Like I don't want to get too caught up in like, oh, I got something new, so it must be the most popping thing. Like, no, that's not it at all. I just want to see what sticks, what people resonate with the most.
Yeah.
And how can I continue to push the envelope? Because if I'm going to be on live, making myself known for something, it's going to be for something new. It's going to be for pushing this worldview, and then I'm going to get the fuck out. Yeah. So yeah. Like I said, you know, like
get out.
And even in a satirical sense, when it comes to like good guys, bad guys, I can see that work. And say you're making a comedy, I feel like that works for comedies. If you're writing a satire, like an Austin Powers, Zoolander type of thing, think of Will Ferrell films, like that's classic like comedy. So I like to pay homage to those type of things. So I would have a bad guy, you know, but like he's aware that he's the bad guy, you know, like that kind of, you know, adding that element of satire, like, oh, watch out, I'm the bad guy. Ooh, John Turkey,
yeah.
like something like that. Like,
really? Okay,
because I'm the bad guy. So yeah.
Deeply.
it's a lot to work with. It's a lot to work with, especially when it comes to genres too. I feel like that could shift the narrative too. Comedy, drama, sci-fi. These things can make it more complex. And even when you were saying earlier too, because I mean I just kind of, you know, made that up going on the fly and it stuck. But it's that idea of allowing the character to just be as like vanilla as possible, and then add some flavor to it through the genre, through what they experience, through their best friend, through their memories, through their past, through their future. That's what kind of makes them a little spicy. That's what. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I see what you're. Okay. Right. All right. Time's right.
Oh. Well, I wanted to and yeah, no, this is, I mean, we're already engaging. I just had something so that you can leave with and that you can apply in your day to day. This idea, and we already like talked about and touched on the subject of how we create new archetypes and characters. But it's this idea that how do we tap into that? Say that we're acting, or say that so I'll use your story for example. You know, say that you want to make these characters real. You want to take them from off the page. By embodying, how do we tap into, and this is a rhetorical, like, how do we tap into these archetypes and characters? By embodying them with our bodies, our physicality. So, for example, and we, you know, this is just an exercise, you don't have to do it right now, but it would go something like this. I would throw you an archetype, right? I'll say old person, and then you have to use your body, no words, in order to physicalize an old person. So, I mean, I'm standing. You could throw me one, and this can be an example. So you could throw me any archetype, like status or
a mime in Paris.
You know, just like how do we tap into that? And before we even speak, embodying that first. We were embodying things first, and then the language came at. Communication is deeper than language. So that entire idea of when you're writing your characters, how do they walk? How do they talk? What's their swag like? Maybe they got injured, and so they walk with a limp. These are things that can then make the character a little, maybe they, or maybe, you know, they missing a pinky toe, so that they got a little limp. But, you know, or maybe they have this formality or whatever that is. They got a hunchback. You know, maybe they walk like this. That entire idea of how do we embody the characters that we're creating and thus making them real. So that's just a little exercise that you can tap into. And then you touched on it perfectly. That entire idea of being inspired by astrology, these archetypes that have existed for eons.
Right.
And then how do we mix and mingle them because we have the knowledge of it now.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we mix and mingle it and create it into these stories and create, how do we take, I'll use myself for example, how do we take Jupiter and Scorpio opposing Moon and Taurus, and what's that character like? What would be that? And what is that heat like? Okay,
Right.
fixed water, fixed earth. Jupiter, okay, maybe seeing like the 180 view, or being able to reflect on how my routines and patterns can eventually lead me to my path of success, or eventually lead me to learning about myself. But I would have to do that behind closed doors, or I use my hobbies and my routine and patterns to transform myself if I stay sturdy to it. If I have a sturdy emotion, like a fixed emotion about it. And I have a fixed way of going about it. So it's like, then that can turn into the characteristic of, okay, I'm a meal prep now. Like I meal prep, I'm a trainer. That idea, like, and I created this way of, and then how we derive a character from that. And that's just one example. And it could go so many different ways, but I just make it make sense to my life. Where it's like, that is something that I could actually get into. Like I could kill it as a personal trainer. And I just might. I don't know. Like I just might get into that.
Got it.
But yeah, that's where it's at right now.
Yes.
That's where we're at right now.
Right.
But yeah, so that is archetypes and characters. Characters are internalized or traits that we act out and that people can recognize through our actions. And thus the accumulation of these things can create an archetype. And archetypes 9 times out of 10 are determined by an external reference or an external source. Like back in the day, it was rulership. But now, we're building communities and we're knowing ourselves and we're presenting ourselves as we are, as we want to be seen, and acting out in that, thus creating our own archetypes. And then we can go out and accumulate different characteristics, because we know who we are. So it's kind of like working in reverse. I see it as a beautiful thing because life is going to go on, but how do we reinvent this? How do we go about, step outside, claiming our names, claiming who we are? So like that, I don't want to get too, I got Jupiter in the 12th house. Let me stop.
It's awesome.
But yeah, so that is it. That is all. Any questions or any, I appreciate it. Oh, thank you, Chance. I appreciate you. But yeah, any kind of like closing?
Oh no, I'm grateful for this space. Grateful for your mind and where it take it. It took us a couple places. I appreciate you. I needed to connect things, and you helped me connect it. So I appreciate you.
I appreciate you as well. Well, we want to stay connected. I think the next you want to do the basics of the basic principles of acting. Was that? Or it was another type of workshop? Was this the only one?
Scene study. I definitely want
to. Okay. Oh, yeah. Let's do that scene study. We're going to make Zoom work. We're going to make it work.
Okay.
You know how to do with copyright on here. But thank you so much for your time. Take care, Chance.
Okay. Much love. All right.
Until next time. Much love.